Well, close to Christmas, but no end of activity with the grumpy taxpayers represented here by President John Treleaven. And we are very honored to have Ryan Mitton speak to us, BC representative for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, I take it. Is that right?
Yes, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, fantastic. You might be the best speaker that we can get for talking about municipal, provincial, and federal tax waste, which of course is all about what grumpy taxpayers are all about.
Well, thank you. It's certainly been a year for small business, and there's a lot to talk about and a lot to look forward to in 2026 as well.
I would point out that Ryan brings to his job at the CFIB degrees from McGill and the London School of Economics in small subjects like governance and public management, and represents an organization that, with what, 100,000 members, Ryan, that you survey on a quite a regular basis.
Yeah, so CFIB, we represent 100,000 members across Canada, and that includes 9,700 members here in BC. And that's all industries across all sectors of the economy. So just to give you an idea, here in BC, are included in our top 5 sectors are construction, manufacturing, and we also represent members in the natural resources sector. So beyond retail and hospitality, we are an all industry organization.
And I've always felt that a lot of politicians and policies are framed in the name of small business, right? SMEs. 98% of businesses in Canada. You can go on and on and on. The truth is that in this country, all business is small business, but for the exceptions. And actually, I think you might agree with me that the exceptions in this country take up an awful lot of political and legislative time that is not devoted to strengthening the position that small business clearly occupies in the economy.
Well, 98% of businesses in BC are small business, and it's so incredibly important to build our economy from the grassroots up. When I look back to the things that CFIB was founded on, it goes all the way back to the giant tax fight that we had in the 70s when we were founded. Well, 1969, Finance Minister Edgar Benson and his white paper wanted to increase taxes on small business 50% while preserving a lot of the tax breaks that were available to larger corporations. And that was the fight. That was the fight that CFIB was founded on, and we've been at it ever since.
Yeah.
Well, you've
John,
as you know, Ryan,
yeah, as you know, Ryan spoke at our AGM recently at the Grand Pacific Hotel. That's our 11th AGM. We're into our 12th year. And he brought some, as I would say all executives of the CFIB do, they brought some fresh news from the front of those 100,000 members based on surveys that the organization does very regularly. There were several areas that were of great interest, I think, including, what's concerning your members in a very unstable time.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to review.
Yeah, we actually, just as of this Thursday, we have new business barometer data. And for your viewers, we take a monthly measure of small business confidence in Canada. It's one of our headline statistical measures. And through a stratified random sample of businesses across the country, we gauge how strongly they feel about the outlook for their business over the next 3 months for the short term and the next 12 months for the long term. And just recently, we've actually seen a jump in small business confidence. So we are finishing the year on a high. In BC, we are actually leading the country in small business confidence at 66 points. And what that's telling us is small businesses are quite ready to leave the year behind them. Back in March of this year, we hit an all-time historical low for small business confidence, lower than the 2008 financial crisis, 9/11, and even COVID. So it really points out just how impactful the trade war has been on small businesses and their operations. We've been taking this measure for over 25 years. And so we hit rock bottom, and now we're starting to climb out of it. But gosh, has it been volatile. And that just speaks to the challenges that small businesses are facing.
Both John and I come from a chamber ecosystem for the past 20, 25 years. I was chair of the downtown chamber. John was chair of the Peninsula Chamber. I then also went on to sit on the chair of the BC Chamber of Commerce Board. And so CFIB was always sort of in our sort of, psyche. And you guys have been, frankly, in my humble opinion, far more successful at representing small business than the chambers have. I'd like to now let's start to hit a little harder here. Okay. I think that small businesses are really taking the brunt of so many of the challenges and incompetence of governments at the three levels who don't seem to know how to manage a local grocery store, let alone a province. I'm very angry about this. I'm really pissed off that they can continue to waste money, to continue to not focus on the priorities that are important to all of us. And most of us are in business of some kind, despite BC's great attempt at trying to generate economic growth by generating more public servants. What are we going to do to start getting focus on business, especially in BC? Because I don't think this government thinks about small business whatsoever until pushed to the wall.
Well, you mentioned the chambers, and I think that actually brings up a good point here, which is we've worked with the other business organizations in British Columbia to sign a joint and open letter to the province laying out our priorities for the upcoming budget. Because truthfully, let's think about this here. Let's think about the trade war, the massive impacts that it's had on BC businesses, on Canadian businesses. This was a call to action that our province in BC needed to look at the economic fundamentals. If we were going to fight the trade war and even win the trade war, we needed to actually get our own house in order and make sure we're in fighting shape. And truthfully, there have been cracks in BC's economic foundation that have been building and growing for some time. We need to firm that up in order to actually make sure we can grow. And that's things like
cracks.
yeah, and that's things like our uncompetitive tax system. CFIB has done some research showing that for a small business, we have one of the least competitive tax systems when it comes to growth in Canada, and we're getting our lunch eaten by US states. If you're down in the United States and you're starting a small business, you can do what's called an S corporation, and that means you can incorporate like we would a sole proprietorship here in Canada, but you take your business income and you file it under personal income taxes. And that's advantageous because most US states have a more competitive personal income tax system there. And that's so many small businesses can avail themselves of that. And then there's also more competitive payroll taxes. That is really, truly, when we get down to the nub of what's holding small businesses back in BC, it's the employer health tax, it's CPP and EI rates, it's WorkSafeBC premiums, because every time you want to hire a new person, pay them more money, or grow your business, you have to hit this wall of new taxes, and it's holding back growth. Just to put this in perspective, if you go from what we call sort of a sample micro business, so say you have 4 or 5 employees, and you want to grow to about 25 employees, you face a 700% increase in your effective tax rate. It's massive. And so that's things like the employer health tax, because you cross over that $1 million payroll threshold, and suddenly you're paying a huge tax on every new amount of employees. So that's why we need to, when in this time of rising unemployment, why would we have a tax on jobs, for example? And so jumping back to the letter that we were so happy to work with the other business organizations, Chamber, Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, and the Business Council, we're also looking at the other factor, which is capital expenditures, PST. This is a system that is not working very well in British Columbia, and it needs to be reformed. We're calling for the exemption of sales tax on new capital investment. We think about where the economy's at. We think about the trade war. Well, okay, we want businesses to come here. We want them to build in British Columbia. And what better way to do that than say, we're going to make those new investments tax-free? Why is the PST such a bad system? Well, let's look at, you look at value-added taxes in places like Europe. You look at the other provinces with the HST. BC, every time a product in the supply chain changes hands, so say it's Christmas time, we're building gingerbread houses here. Every time you go to the store, you buy a product, you integrate it, you pass it on down the supply chain to the next manufacturer, the next distributor. Sales tax accrues at each point of that purchase. So it's not just 7% at the end of the day, right? It's 7% plus 7% plus 7%, and it adds up through the system. So no wonder things like housing is getting so expensive to build. No wonder products are getting so expensive to construct. It's because we're stacking this up through the supply chain. Other tax systems have something called input tax credits. You can write that off. We don't have that here in BC. And if we want to really bring our economy in an about face and start fighting this trade war, this is something we need to address.
And of course, this province took a decision. The HST was in fact introduced here, but there was such opposition to it that it was withdrawn. And as I saw that debate unfold, it seemed to me the dynamic that took hold was, gee, the HST is really good for business. Therefore, it must be really bad for me. And the politicians buckled, uniquely in British Columbia, because they didn't buckle in the other provinces.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the unwinding of the HST and the reintroduction of the PST, it was a complete mess. Complete mess.
I haven't encountered many politicians who are wanting to refight the HST fight, but I do worry that sort of sordid history of the referendum is deterring politicians from taking a hard look at what makes us competitive. And just because we need to fix the PST on capital investment and grow the economy doesn't mean we're asking to redo the HST debacle. They're two different sort of apples and oranges conversations here, which is hopefully we can open the eyes of government to the possibilities, the expanded, the potential to expand the economy. We've done some research, actually. Our analysis shows that if we were to exempt the PST on capital investment just for small businesses alone, we would unlock $1.6 billion in new economic activity. Mm-hmm. That's just by asking businesses what their planned expenditures are and how much they'd be willing to increase it if they weren't paying a tax on all that new investment.
Yeah, and of course, they will increase those plans to the extent that they think their customers can afford to pay the taxes, because the businesses don't pay the taxes. They collect taxes from their sales. On a much more positive note, Ryan, I mean, I've been impressed over the years with the work that CFIB has done to shine a flashlight on the issue of interprovincial trade barriers. And lo and behold, in our lifetime, we may actually see the last of those relegated to the dust heap of history. 6 months ago, that wasn't going to be the case. And
I think we have seen more momentum on internal trade in the last 6 months than we have in the last 6 years. It is truly astounding the amount of work that has gone into this. British Columbia chairing the committee on this as well. It's has huge economic potential. And when we look at the research that's out there, we start, obviously it's a 35% general tariff right now. We started out at about 25% in this trade war. Research shows that if we were to completely strip down all internal barriers to trade, it would have the same effect in BC as removing a 23% tariff. So we're taking a huge bite out of the impact that this trade war is having on BC's economy. But we're only a third of the way there. We've exempted non-food, non-alcohol items. And the two remaining big things are food, alcohol, and also labor. We need to actually address labor as well, and the free flow of skilled professionals being able to work across borders.
Ryan, I'm a huge supporter of small business, like huge, and love this conversation. And very much appreciate the work you're doing on the tax side, which is one of many barriers crippling the growth of small business, crippling prosperity of small companies. Another one that I'd like to know your opinion on, where you guys stand, is on the issue of safety in our downtowns, around drug abuse, around a lack of appropriate health care, and how that never seems to be solved. And these businesses are trying to operate, and people are not coming downtown because of that. And none of our governments want to deal with this, which is just insane. Where does CFIB stand on these issues, please?
I hear from countless businesses that are frustrated with the crime and safety issues in our downtown cores. It is an issue for us, and it's something that we are advocating to government on, and on two fronts, really. First of all, when we do talk to our members, they do think it's important to address root causes. So that's, policing and enforcement is one aspect, but we also need to address underlying health issues as well. That's something that our members do care about. So that is healthcare, that is mental health care. That's also making sure that when we pay for our property taxes for things like clean streets, making sure we have clean downtowns, that graffiti and vandalism is repaired.
Yeah, and that's the
making
point.
Sure that
I don't mind as a business person paying taxes, as a family man paying taxes, as long as they go to the places that I can't change myself, that require government to change them. But that's not happening. There's a disconnect. Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you, but
No, you're quite right.
Right.
And our members do feel that, increasingly that they're not getting the level of service that they pay for when it comes to either police response times, feeling like that if someone does come in and break their window, that person's going to face consequences. There is a lack of general confidence in those issues being addressed. One of the things we're asking governments to do, or rather to bring back, is grants to help small businesses with crime and vandalism. I know this is something that's being done in the city of Victoria through the Downtown Victoria Business Association, but it's something we need to see in other parts of the province. The provincial government did try and roll out a program, the Securing Small Business Rebate Program, but they canceled it as part of the 2025 budget because they said not enough people applied. Well, that's a bit of a misnomer. Really, what they said is you had to have a police report and you had to have an insurance claim. And one of the two things that businesses aren't doing because they're skeptical about the current system right now is filing police reports and insurance claims because they don't want their premiums to go up, and they're not getting the level of service they want when it comes to response times and case follow through. So that was kind of stopped the program before it even started. We think it's possible to renew this program with lower barriers to entry and bring it back to make sure that small businesses' costs are actually eliminated, because windows aren't cheap. It is really expensive to repair a window. It's really expensive to get security upgrades. It's a huge cost, and as John said, that just flows down to the cost for the customer and the cost of doing business at the end of the day.
And it's really expensive to keep getting new employees because the other ones are quitting because they don't want to work there. Well, I think this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you allowing me to vent. I'm a huge supporter of small business, and I don't think we get the kind of protections or value that we deserve. How about you and John and I talk with you maybe in 3 months after some budgets have been presented in Parliament and see where we're at again?
It's going to be a real test for the provincial government to get things on the right track and make sure we can be competitive again. And we look forward to seeing what's in the budget.